welcome to Freedom on Air. This is our time in the studio with Katerina Nestorenko, bringing you the top news from Ukraine and around the world at this hour. Last night, Russian forces carried out strikes on several targets in Kryvyi Rih. Due to the shelling, 2 districts were left without electricity, reported the head of the city's defense council, Alexander Vilko. Emergency repair work is ongoing, and heating in the city is ensured. Most boiler houses are operating, some of them on generators. 3 major boiler houses have already reached the required operating parameters. 1 remains without power, and repair work is underway. The water supply in the city is stable, and the pumping stations are functioning. As a result of the Russian Federation strike on the Dnipropetrovsk region, 3 people were injured, a woman and 2 men. One of them is in Kryvyi Rih, the other in the Samyevsky district. A private house was damaged there, according to local authorities and the State Emergency Service of Ukraine. Russian forces attacked the region with drones, striking energy and civilian infrastructure. A fire broke out in a garage cooperative in Dnipro. 2 units were destroyed and 27 were damaged. Emergency repair and restoration work is ongoing. On the night of January 10th, Russia attacked the residential sector of the Hutor-Mykolivska community in the Sumy region. This was reported by the State Emergency Service of Ukraine. As a result of the strike, there is damage and destruction. Rescuers extinguished all the fires. No people were injured. The day before, in the evening, Russian forces launched a missile strike on the Slobitsky district of Kharkiv, targeting the area of a garage cooperative. Garage units and cars were destroyed and damaged, and windows were blown out in nearby apartment buildings. This was reported by the State Emergency Service of Ukraine. There were no casualties, according to the communal service rescuers. They continue to clear the rubble and inspect the site of the strike. And there is already a report from the Ukrainian Air Force. On the night of January 10th, Russia attacked Ukraine with 1 Iskander-M ballistic missile and launched 121 attack drones. The drones were launched from the territory of the Russian Federation, from Kursk, Oryol, Milarovo, Primorsko-Akhtarsk, and Cape Chauda in temporarily occupied Crimea. The enemy's air attack was countered by aviation, anti-aircraft missile units, electronic warfare, and drone system units, as well as mobile fire groups of the Ukrainian Defense Forces. According to preliminary data, air defense shot down or suppressed 94 UAVs. There were confirmed hits from a ballistic missile and 27 attack drones at 15 locations. Already on Monday, January 12th, the UN Security Council will convene. An emergency meeting will be held. This was demanded by Ukraine and Latvia. The reason is the Russian strike with cluster munitions in the Lviv region and the massive attack on Kyiv's energy infrastructure. Ukraine's permanent representative to the UN, Andriy Melnik, called the actions of the Russian Federation a new level of war crimes. Latvian Foreign Minister Baiba Braje noted that the Security Council meeting was necessary in response to Russia's barbaric attack. The Kremlin confirmed the launch of the Oreshnik ballistic missile at Ukraine. In Moscow, this strike was called retribution for the alleged attack on Putin's residence. The Kremlin claims that the strike targeted military facilities. In reality, the aggressor country's target was Ukrainian civilian infrastructure. Yulia Graniskaya will tell you more. And
on the night of January 9th, the Russian army launched a massive strike on the capital of Ukraine, using dozens of ballistic and cruise missiles, as well as attack drones. And the Lviv region was attacked by a medium-range ballistic missile. Ukraine's security services classify the use of these weapons against Ukraine's civilian infrastructure as a war crime committed by Russia.
According to preliminary information, preliminary reports indicate that the discovered components belong to the Oreshnik missile system. Among the parts found were a stabilization and guidance unit, and these are essentially the brains of the missile. Parts of the propulsion system, fragments of the orientation mechanism, nozzles from the separation block platform, and so on. The corresponding debris is considered physical evidence and is being prepared for transfer to in-depth examinations. Putin is using a medium-range missile near the EU and NATO border in response to his own hallucinations. This is truly a global threat, and it requires a global response. More decisive action must be taken against the Russian tanker fleet. And the United States is right to take steps in this direction, as well as against Russia's oil revenues, its schemes, and assets, not only in the EU, but around the world. We call on all responsible states and international organizations to expose Russian lies without delay and to increase pressure on the aggressor, said Andriy Sybiga, Ukraine's Minister of Foreign Affairs, on the social network X.
Experts are convinced that this is a massive terrorist strike against Ukraine. This is an expression of the Russian dictator's impotent rage. He failed to force Ukraine and its partners to accept the Kremlin's ultimatums. Putin was also unable to protect his interests in Venezuela.
This, of course, is primarily an act of intimidation. We always know that when Putin finds himself in a tight spot, there's the story with Venezuela and the seizure of Russian tankers from the Shadow Fleet. And all of this, of course, dealt a serious blow to Putin's prestige. And not just internationally, because Trump actually showed what people really think of him. Lex.
Remember that the world recognized this story about the supposed attack on Putin's residence as a fake. And so the only thing Putin thinks he can respond with in this situation is the Oreshnik, and also to show his domestic audience, first and foremost, the Z patriots, that he's not some kind of pushover, that he actually has the Oreshnik.
It looks like the streak of bad luck for the Kremlin dictator is just beginning. On January 7th, the United States seized the oil tanker Marinera sailing under the Russian flag after pursuing it in the Atlantic. The vessel, which was involved in transporting Venezuelan oil, tried to evade the sanctions blockade by changing its flag and obtaining Russian registration. Despite being escorted by a Russian submarine and a destroyer, American troops boarded the ship.
I don't want to talk about it, but the fact is the Russian ships, it was a submarine and a destroyer. Both left very quickly when we arrived.
The collapse of the regime in Venezuela and the arrest of Nicolás Maduro became a personal humiliation for Putin. This was a direct blow to the ambitions of the Kremlin's leader. Moscow was unable to protect its main ally in Latin America, lost assets and resources, and the myth of a multipolar world, which Putin had promoted for years as an alternative to Western dominance, was finally dispelled.
President Putin turned out to be a useless ally for the ousted Venezuelan leader Maduro. But the humiliation runs much deeper. The United States, as the true global superpower, is making the Kremlin green with envy. With his lightning-fast operation to capture Venezuelan dictator Nicolás Maduro, U.S. President Donald Trump showed that the so-called multipolar world of anti-Western dictatorial alliances proclaimed by Putin from Caracas to Tehran is essentially, however...
This is hardly the first time Putin has revealed his true weakness and powerlessness. Venezuela is by no means an exception. Moscow merely watched as Bashar al-Assad's regime fell in Syria, and Russia was unable to support even its strategic ally Iran during U.S. and Israeli strikes on its nuclear facilities. Yulia Grenskaya for Freedom TV Channel.
Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy stated that he expects to receive a response from Russia to the 20-point peace plan by the end of this month. The head of state spoke about this in an interview with Bloomberg. Zelenskyy noted that he is waiting for Moscow's response before the final approval of U.S. security guarantees and the recovery plan. The president of Ukraine also reported that Kyiv has submitted its comments on territorial proposals through U.S. special representatives. And according to sources, Volodymyr Zelenskyy may meet with Donald Trump in the coming days to finalize agreements on security guarantees for Ukraine. This was reported by Axios. A possible meeting, either in the U.S. or on the sidelines of the World Economic Forum in Davos. It should solidify the security mechanisms that Kyiv and Washington are discussing in a bilateral format. More than 10 people have died as a result of Storm Gareth, which swept across Europe. In Turkey, 5 people died due to the disaster. Strong winds, rain, and snow have paralyzed transportation. Hundreds of thousands of homes in northern France and southern England are without electricity. Schools in France are also closed due to the bad weather. Roads and ports. Northern Germany has also been hit by heavy snowfall. In Hamburg and Bremen, schools are closed and rail service has been suspended.
When it got relatively light, we came here and just couldn't believe how much destruction the storm had caused. There were bricks and debris everywhere, the car was almost half crushed, and my mom's wheelchair was in the trunk. It was pretty difficult to get it out, so this morning we had to look for a place to buy a new one. All of this happened early, at 8 o'clock. The stores weren't open yet. Luckily, we managed to find a wheelchair. I want to go to Cologne, but all the trains to Cologne have been canceled. Right now, I'm waiting for a train to Cologne that's supposed to leave at 11:46. It'll probably be canceled within the next half hour. That means I'll have to spend another night in Berlin. We'll see.
In Australia, a significant part of the state of Victoria has been declared a disaster zone because of wildfires. The fire has affected 18 municipalities and a ski resort. 3 people are missing. 38,000 homes are without electricity. The fire has already destroyed more than 130 buildings and over 300,000 hectares of land. Authorities have been granted expanded powers to evacuate the population. State Premier Jacinta Allen emphasized that the main priority remains saving human lives.